Yeah, and if that's true, right, or if it's true that it feels like that, then all you can do is just register that you were a witness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what all of this is about, right? Is just like we're gonna march to show that we were there.
We witnessed it.
Yeah, we know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's depressing. I mean, first of all, but it's also, I mean, to bring it back to the media thing, I mean, I feel like it's a big part of why like letterboxed and all and social media in general have taken off is that, you know, it increasingly feels, I don't know that this is true, that you don't
Mm-hmm.
get to have an opinion that matters if you're not in a certain class of our society. Right?
Mm-hmm.
That feels like it's a class. You know,
Yeah.
if you're not, and it's like, even if you're an upper middle class person, or like you were born upper middle class,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to break into it, right? You have to be a person who went to the right schools, or did the right thing, or had the right dad who knew the right people. That's all that it's about. That's how you break in. And if you don't get to break in, your opinion doesn't matter. But we've also invented all of these tools where you can scream into the void.
You are listening to Fruitless, a podcast hosted by me, Josiah Sutton. This is episode 25, Morbid Symptoms, featuring Jesse D. Goodman. Yeah, it is the beginning of the new year officially. We did it. We got through 2023.
Congrats, everybody.
Good work.
Feels bad. It doesn't feel good.
It feels like a year that was just going downhill the whole time. And I'm hoping that means this year will be like it's going up, you know?
Yeah, we started with near hyperinflation and ended with multiple genocides. So like
It's not been a good fucking year.
Somehow still better than 2022. I will put that out there.
I think you might be right.
Yeah.
Oh god. But I will say real quick, welcome, of course, to Fruitless, and I am joined today by Jesse Goodman, who I've been meaning to have on for a while, actually.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah.
I have a scary confession to make, which is that I don't think I've ever actually listened through a full Fruitless episode before. I meant to, and then I listened to Mammonberg pretty religiously. I don't think I've ever, like, maybe the capitalist realism one. I might have listened to that one all the way through, but I think
that one was on VLBC, so I think that was even on Fruitless.
Oh wow, okay.
No, that's totally okay, because I was doing a really bad job promoting it in the beginning. And so I feel like most people weren't that, like, even aware I was doing it, let alone if they were seeing it, they were just kind of like, okay. And it was like September of last year that I was like actually started trying to get people to listen to it. So yeah, it's been kind of a relaunch thing. So it's still kind of a new show, even though it's technically been around for like 2 years. It's because like I've actually started now, like in September.
I think I actually did listen to the 1848 episode. You did with Chris. That was good. But yeah, feels good to be here.
Hell yeah.
We're in 2024 and we're on Fruitless.
And I guess like the vague topic I threw at you was like, well, okay, so you pointed out we both been writing Substacks kind of, you know, recently been you've been doing it for a while, but you stopped, right? At one point.
I started my Substack. I want to say it was the end of 2021. I don't think it was 2022 yet. Because I started it right when I graduated college. I was in college through COVID. Pretty much. Same. Like COVID hit like halfway through the time I was a sophomore, and like I graduated at, like, I had one semester back where we were wearing masks. In 2021, and then I graduated at the end of that. So
gotcha.
And I started the Substack as like I had decided to take a year off between grad school and undergrad, and
Hmm.
I just like wanted something to make sure I would keep writing, and I wasn't ready to start my novel yet, so I just
Yeah.
started Substack because that's what everybody was doing at the end of
And
2021 feels like.
yeah.
And nobody was using WordPress anymore. Ghost wasn't around yet, so I went with that, and then I was fairly consistent with it for like a year and a half, and then I started grad school, and it was like no, never didn't touch it for like forever, and then came back a couple of months ago with this new project that I'm doing, which is just like monthly movie reviews that aren't really reviews; they're just kind of spitballing.
Hmm.
But
That's it's like an interesting overlap between how we
yeah,
both did it, because I started my like main Substack that it's like that I don't ever write on right now in 2021 as well, in the summer of 2021, and then burned out on it slowly, would keep reviving it every once in a while. And then my idea for like, okay, I'm going to force myself to be writing weekly just to keep the habit, was I launched a separate Substack, which I have now been actually keeping up and active. So I don't know if I ever talk about it on Fruitless, but yeah, check it out. But no, and it was like a media roundup. So just like I was watching tons of movies. So I was like, well, let's just try to write my thoughts about what movies I watched this last week and just put it on there, or music I've been listening to or whatever. And that's kind of, and then you've kind of like, yeah, returned to Substack with that focus on like reviewing movies you're watching. So it's interesting that we kind of did the same thing.
yeah, yeah. Well, I moved to Pittsburgh, and in my
Right.
neighborhood, there is like this old movie theater that has like tickets for students for like $7.50 after like 5 o'clock
Nice.
on Wednesdays. So I go see movies all the time, and I was like, this could be something I could do, short little
Hmm.
things. And it's fun, and it keeps me from like killing myself. Uh,
Yep.
postpones that because I have to get through the year that I promised I would
I would
complete.
say I'm doing this.
Yeah. So far I have two. I mean, you've been doing the media roundups forever. But I have two on my Substack. One was on the holdovers, and one was on Poor Things.
Yeah.
So if you want to go read those, you can. Highly recommend
Yeah.
it.
I really
I
want to see. I still haven't seen. I actually was really bad at seeing movies this year. But you got me really wanting to see Poor Things. I wanted to see it just insofar as it was a Yorgos Lanthimos film.
Yeah,
I wanted to see it, but you got me really sold on like really wanting to see it here soon.
it's the most sexually explicit movie I think I've seen in theaters. Which
Oh,
is
really?
which is like hard to say, I guess, because I'm a Zoomer. So
Right.
movies haven't really been sexual since I have been watching movies in theaters. Um, I mean, certainly, no toplessness in Harry Potter, right? But like,
Right. Right.
uh, but like, and the sex scenes are so weird. I mean, they're
Oh,
not
because it's. I
like,
mean.
well, yeah. I mean, first of all, they're super explicit and like weirdly kinky in like weird ways, but like the way that they're shot is very clinical. And knowing Yorgos, it's definitely intentional.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Have you
yeah.
watched
He's
Dogtooth before?
I haven't watched Dogtooth.
That
I've
one has
watched
some like pretty
yeah.
upsetting sexual scenes. Yeah.
It isn't really upsetting. I mean, it's very like there's nothing non-consensual that happens like off the top of
Sure.
my head.
Sure.
I mean there's nothing that's like weird. It's all just or there's nothing that's like bad, right? There's nothing that's like
Yeah.
morally wrong that happens. There is an extended most of what I'm thinking of is this extended sequence where she's working as a prostitute, and
Hmm.
it like shows very explicitly what she's doing as a prostitute, and it's all these sort of like weird things she's doing for French noblemen and
Oh
and
God.
stuff. But she's into it. Obviously, like it depicts her as being okay with everything that's happening to her. So you can't be
Sure.
like,
Yeah.
well, it's morally wrong. Um, but the like the way it's shot is so like clinical and uninvolved that it's like creates this weird almost distancing effect where like I mean, so much sex scene discourse, which I'm sure that fruitless listeners are familiar with. How
Hmm.
every 2 months or so we get a new guy being like, "Oh, we should think about why no one has sex in movies anymore," and it's always
Yeah.
like talking about like Basic Instinct or whatever fucking Verhoeven movie.
Yeah, yeah. Showgirls, whatever.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, right. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
always like, why doesn't anybody fuck anymore? Um, and,
Yeah,
um,
even Ross Douthat, I think,
yeah,
has
yeah.
like
Ross Douthat wrote a book. I used to have a copy actually somewhere. Yeah, it's over there on my bookshelf. But yeah, he's got a whole thing. Only I don't think his is about movies. His is like about Zoomers, teens.
Yeah.
The teens
Yeah,
aren't
yeah.
having enough sex. But like even about movies, we get like even Mark Fisher had like bits
Yeah.
about this stuff. I mean, it's been going on forever. And the sex scenes and poor things are extremely explicit, but they're not passionate, right? Like one of the things that like every
Yeah.
commentator that I've ever read on like sex scenes is like, well, all sex scenes A are not explicit and B they're super clinical. Like people
Hmm.
are uninvolved. And like the I feel I mean my interpretation after watching it in theaters was like, oh, Yorgos is making some sort of commentary on this, right?
Hmm.
Is like we he's shooting the scene in such a way that the viewer is forced to confront that even though the characters are passionate, the camera is in some way dispassionate. And
Yeah.
so it's like, even though we're trying to re-achieve something, it's whatever energy was there in the 70s and 80s is long gone.
Hmm.
And this even extends to like the character design stuff too, because I mean the other thing that you see like the hot takes about sex scenes that are all ultimately the same hot take do is they'll talk about like how Bruce Willis used to be a sex symbol, right? Even
Yeah.
even when he wasn't like roided up, and now everybody's jacked all the time, but nobody's horny. Um,
Hmm.
I think that's actually like the name of one of those pieces that everybody like
Everybody's
read.
jacked, or everybody's
Yeah,
beautiful, but nobody's horny, whatever, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone is beautiful, but no one is horny. I think that's the one on Blood Knife. But they like Emma Stone is like depicted like her naked body is on screen so much that you become desensitized to it within like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean she is constantly naked. Um, and so are all of the men in the movie. Like not most of the main men. Like I don't think Mark Ruffalo shows hog. But a lot.
Damn it.
Yeah, the people are demanding this, Mark. Uh,
Everybody wants it.
but but like all the side characters and stuff, a lot of them, there's a lot of male nudity too. But all of them are depicted. They don't have like the superhero physique. Like Emma Stone in
Hmm.
particular, like they make her look paler than she is.
Oh,
And
okay.
she's already like a pretty fair skinned woman, but it's
Hmm.
like pallid appearance. And a lot of the dudes that she's hooking up with are dirty and uglied up and
Yeah, sure, sure.
um
That's really
so yeah.
interesting.
Yeah, fascinating movie. I need to go see it again. But then The
Yeah,
Holdovers also probably my film of the year. Probably
think so.
Holdovers. Yeah, either that or Asteroid City. And that would probably be my pick.
Okay, yeah. Man, this has been, yeah, bad year for me seeing movies. Which is like real quick, I guess we should say like kind of the kind of vague topic we have here is like, yeah, like we had said, this last year in movie consumption. For you were actively going to theaters, right? For
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
it was like just whatever my interest was, and I've done a very bad job seeing movies this year. So which is kind of a bummer because I do like Asteroid City looks really great. Killer of the Flower Moon. I think it's embarrassing. I have nothing to say about Barbie or Oppenheimer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
I actually did Barbenheimer.
you did it.
That was the first thing I did when I moved to Pittsburgh. What actually was I went and saw Barbie, and then I was like, they also have Oppenheimer. They have a showing of Oppenheimer at like 9:20. I could just see the
Mhm.
late night Oppenheimer, and I had to be up at like 8 a.m. the next morning. But I was like, I could see Oppenheimer. And then I couldn't like get the thought out of my head. So
Mhm.
I just did it. So as I didn't get out of the theater until like midnight because the show itself didn't start until like 9:45. Was Barbenheimer worth it? No. Was
It does sound like just a weird time to mash up those movies, which I know is the bit, but also like I don't know.
Well, I think it originally started, the idea was it Warner Brothers that did Barbie? Or was it
I
the other
don't
way around?
know.
Did Warner do Oppenheimer?
I think
One of
Warner
them,
did Barbie. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
I'll double
because
check.
Warner and Christopher Nolan have hated each other for like years.
Right.
I'm pretty sure, at least the rumor is that Barbie was designed to fuck over Oppenheimer.
By
Like
being
they
so bright and colorful or whatever, like
No,
in light.
just by being like a major IP that was going to come out
Oh,
on the
okay.
same
Dropping at the
day.
same time. Okay, got it.
Yeah. As like a 3 hour biopic of a guy who nobody's ever heard of,
Right. Yeah, never heard of
unless you're like a freak.
him. One thing is like I know that it was really successful, that pairing, it seems like. But and this is one of those cliches, but I think it like kind of become a cliche already to say it. But like I do think that studios are gonna learn the wrong lesson for how successful that was. That it's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, we just gotta do more of these ironic mashups. And that's it. That's how people are going to go to movies, and not like, well, okay, no, two auteurs got to release movies.
On
That
the
was the
same
thing.
day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like the Nolan fanboys are going to go see Nolan no matter what. And I include myself in that, right? Like
Mhm.
his next movie, I'm going to go see it. And I'm probably going to go see it twice. Um, I mean, it's like all the people who go see every Ridley Scott movie, even
Mhm.
though Ridley Scott has never
Which is
released a good movie in theaters. Like,
it's becoming a slow diminishing kind of return
yeah,
here.
yeah, like all of the freaks who were like, no, you just don't get it about Tenet. They're all
Yeah.
gonna go see Oppenheimer, and Oppenheimer's gonna turn a profit. Like it's gonna be
Right.
fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
And Barbie was always gonna make a ton of money because it's a live action Barbie movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, people are gonna go see it. Conservatives are mad that like Greta Gerwig did it, but if they had handed it over to, I don't know, I can't think of any like I'm so brain poisoned. I can't think of any like normal film directors. I can only think
I
about people who've trended on Twitter in the last 3 years.
right, exactly. No,
Um,
but yeah, I mean, because I think like for me, from and again, I haven't seen Barbie, but from like the kind of reception it got, I think what the takeaway should be is like, look, if we're going to be doing these IP projects anyway, at least start like bringing in interesting directors. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
if the corporate thing is going to happen, at least have interesting people behind them. Uh,
Well, that's what Marvel did. And we
mm,
saw how well that worked out. Because like that was
right.
the whole idea behind giving Chloe Zhao a Marvel
Mm,
movie was like, she did the Oscar nominated. I forget if Nomadland won, didn't it?
yeah. Or something like that. It
Yeah,
it yeah,
it
I
won
know it got
something.
received, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Received a lot of
It
praise.
was at the Oscars. I can't remember if it won or not. But like Nomadland did extremely well. So they were like, okay, we're gonna get this lady to do our 3 hour superhero movie about this one
Mm.
obscure team who
Oh,
nobody but the real fans have heard of, and it did terribly.
yeah, that's true. So maybe it isn't a perfect method here. Because because that was Eternals, right? I mean,
Yeah,
big thing with Eternals though is it just looked like shit.
yeah, which is weird because Nomadland is such a beautiful movie.
Well, and I think part of that, I don't know to what extent that was like studio interference that caused it to look like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's the other thing about the big IP projects too, is it really doesn't matter who the director is if the studio is just gonna like ruin everything, you know.
right, which is becoming their kind of seeming strategy, which is come in and mostly force them to do whatever you want, but then if people get mad about it, then blame the director.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or apparently in the case of whatever the Marbles, the most recent one that like
Oh yeah.
bombed, they're like blaming the young girl actress.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
which is fucked in its own way. But
God. Well, let's see. There's a couple ways we could do it. You mentioned going like through the year. Do you want to try to do that? Like we start at the beginning and work our way through, or what?
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we could do our ins and outs. What do
Okay.
you? Yeah, just sort of loosely. I mean, what were your favorite things that you did this year?
Like with let's see, like films I've seen and stuff like that, or just in general, like live.
I mean, either or. I mean, what is life if not
Consuming.
consumption? You know, like,
Yeah. Well, the personal, like maybe producing wise stuff was like, the zombie video essay I did last year was
oh
something I
yeah,
was really proud of. And yeah, and then just kind of actually getting Fruitless up and running again, rather than just being the podcast that, everyone forgets I have. Like it has a Patreon, and it makes enough money to pay for my Patreon subscriptions to other podcasts.
nice, nice.
Yeah.
That's genuinely actually pretty impressive.
I am making even. But yeah, that's the personal stuff. But yeah, movies I've been having a hard time because of how many movies I watched
Mhm.
this year, which I don't think I'm gonna do next year. I think it was just something about, well, we mentioned like 22 sucking, and then 23 has sucked in just like a lamer way. And I think, I just started like watching a lot of movies because everything sucked.
Yeah,
It's like that was the art form I could just kind of channel myself into. He's with it's almost because I know that you like film snobby people will get mad if I say it's a passive art form, because they'll be like, well, no, you need to actively watch it, engage with it, and that's true. But also it feels like something that you put it on and it happens to you, rather than like
yeah,
reading. And as I've just been, I don't know, admittedly very depressed the last few years, movies have just been easier because I just kind of witnessed them. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that's like first of all, the only people who I hear who are like you have to be actively engaged watching movies all the time are like the worst kind of like NYU Tish, fucker. Like,
Right, right.
it's the absolute worst kind of people who are the most annoying, the most annoying guy in your intro to philosophy class.
Yeah,
Says
right.
that. Yeah, no, I think that's like kind of I feel like that's more broadly responsible for like this weird return to film
Hmm.
enjoyment that I've just kind of noticed more broadly. Like in the
Yeah.
like it feels like I mean this is entirely vibes based. I have no like
No data here.
hard reason to believe this. But it does feel like people are getting like back particularly into like exploitation film and art house stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah, you could maybe say that the middle brow has been dominant for so long that there's a rebellion right now. And so people are either like, for me anyway, my taste has really become like, no, I either want like Godard or like a sexploitation movie from 1971.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Nobody's and even like the old middle brow
Yeah.
is coming back,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
is
yeah.
really interesting. It's like you can like the zeitgeist is middle brow movies from like before 2004.
Hmm.
But like if somebody releases like some middle brow stuff contemporaneously and it's not Hayao Miyazaki,
Yeah.
take them out back, shoot
Yeah,
them.
you're done.
Yeah, you're out.
Well, and I think in general, like genre movies were becoming middle brow. And I think that's Phil Chrisman has a really good essay about this, actually, of like we've been at a place where like genre films were in this like middle brow, like Marvel kind of, I feel like, kind of produced
Yeah,
this and stuff like that, and it's a really good essay, actually. I wish I had the book in front of me right now, but he talks about like, oh, what is, it's a great line. He says like the modern American myth is footloose. We're not allowed to enjoy our things unless we can make up a snobby critic that hates it. And so like
oh my god, that's so true.
yeah, it's, he's like, everything is a quote unquote guilty pleasure right now, but no one's actually guilty about what they're watching.
Yeah,
And so yeah, I don't know. For me, it has been a rebellion of like going back to like 80s and 70s, like old shitty genre movies, and then even like modern shitty genre stuff as well, even just like more an attraction to the gutters of cinema. I don't know.
yeah, no, I get that. Actually, the next essay that I'm planning is the three movie musicals that
Mm.
just came out.
Hmm.
Like Wonka, Mean Girls the musical is about to come out, and the Color Purple musical.
Okay.
All have come out. All look really bad. Wonka is really bad. I can confirm.
Oh God.
The music is genuinely pretty good. They got the guy from the Divine Comedy to do the music, but
Okay.
like it's like exceedingly obvious auto tune all over the place and like
Ugh.
weird dead-eyed CGI animals. It's awesome. It rocks. It's it's cats. It's like not as good cats is Wonka.
Not as good cats is a really strange pitch because that built into that's like an Armand White sentence
Yeah,
because you know where it's where he'll be like, this is almost as bad as Citizen Kane, and you're like, what? Wait, because it's like got a loaded premise in it that you're suddenly
yeah,
like,
yeah,
wait, what do you mean? Like he didn't actually say that, but something like that. You just be like, well, it's not as good as Cats. It's like, wait a second here.
yeah. Well, like if you want like bad movies that are good again because they're
But
so
bizarre,
bad.
strange. Yeah.
Yeah, like I cried watching Cats the first time. I'd had three glasses of wine, and it was the height of COVID, and the Ian McKellen cat got up,
Yeah.
who is the one that they like added in. I don't think he's in this stage show.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think his song was like cut from the stage show and added back in for the musical movie, and he like gets up and he does this like thing about how he's so old, and I was like, oh my god. I remember turning to my roommate and being like, Jordan, this is so sad. He was like, what are you talking about?
Oh man. Well, I am excited to read about your the musicals here.
Yeah,
Yeah, what are your what was it? Ups and downs? Is that what you were saying? Something like that?
ups and downs. I mean, I started grad school, so that is
That's
that is
good.
both. I feel like I definitely
Right.
feel like I'm way
Yeah,
more
yeah.
annoying than I was 6 months ago. Uh, I'm a worse person.
You're worse.
Yeah, the National released two albums that I thought were both really good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the first one in retrospect, I don't think was as good. I went back to it a while ago and I was like, it had some really good songs on it.
Hmm.
The second one has, I think, their best song ever, which I would pick as my top song of the year, "Smoke Detector" by the National.
Okay.
I listened to way more music this year. I will say I actually watched way less movies. Um, than I
Okay.
did in 2022, I think.
Mhm.
I watched better movies. I'll say I spent a lot less time just watching like random crap with my parents and like spending a lot
Okay.
more time picking stuff out that I wanted to watch. Part of which had to do with like starting grad school
Yeah,
because
just not.
music is one of those things that you can like listen to it while you're like cleaning your apartment or something and still have an active experience
Yeah.
in a way. Like it is, I mean, music is like film in that it's both an active and a passive like
Yeah, because it's
style of
also nice to
experience.
just have in the background and you don't have to focus on it, but also
Yeah,
it could be both. Yeah, I
yeah,
agree.
and I think it's way easier to like have an active experience listening to music while doing passive
Yeah.
work. Especially I was working as a janitor for the first half of the year.
Oh
um
yeah.
so while I was doing that, it was I could just kind of listen to stuff. But I did a lot of driving because I was traveling back and
Hmm.
forth while I was moving and stuff. But MJ Lenderman having a breakthrough, huge day for kind of weird looking guys everywhere. I think he put out a really good live record. That would be a top. And Caroline Polachek's album, "Desire I
Okay.
Want to Turn Into You," came out like in like January of 2023, I think. I'm gonna
Yeah,
look that up,
yeah, I think you're right because I remember it being about the beginning of this year.
which is insane because it feels like so long ago. So February 14th, 2023.
Hmm.
When did Bunny as a Rider come out? Oh, okay. And the first song from it came out in 2021, though. That's
Oh,
weird.
okay. What the
But
hell?
what the fuck? Uh, but Yeah, the Polachek record was really good too. Those would be my picks probably.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah.
um, and I mean, there was a good Mountain Goats album that came out.
Yeah.
The Turnpike
So,
Troubadours came back for those of you interested in country music with a mostly middling new album, but it's good
mm,
to see that that guy's sober now. Uh,
yeah, that's good.
I don't know. 2023 was such a weird year. I mean,
Yeah.
both in my personal life because I started it as a janitor and ended it as a grad student, which is like
Yeah, that is.
that's like polar 180. But also it was like it was a weird year to like I think I said this before we started recording, but it like
Mhm.
started with like near hyperinflation and ended with multiple genocides.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Ukraine was at war for a year already when or like six
Yeah.
months or something when the no, yeah, it had been a year because it was in
It had been a
2021.
year because it was no, it was 22, but it was the very beginning of 22. It was like I
Okay.
believe February.
Yeah, so like we started the year off with Ukraine being at war for almost a year, and we ended it with like multiple genocides happening in Armenia and Palestine.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's just like the ambient psychic noise of that.
Yeah. That's what I because that's the thing that I've kept coming back to with the media roundups is like, I started it initially being kind of a silly like, okay, here's what I've been watching or whatever. But the problem is like my mind is still on like the politics stuff. And
Yeah.
so like I don't it would just end up weaving the two in not always the best way, but that was just constantly what I was stuck doing on those Substack pieces because it's really hard to be like, here's a French New Wave movie I watched or something when there's a genocide taking place.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, particularly when like, I mean, we live in a world where I don't think Anton Yeager came up with the term, but he
Hmm.
used the term hyperpolitical to talk about it,
Yeah.
right? Which that's a really, really good essay that everyone should read, called "Everything is Hyperpolitical" in the Point
Nice.
magazine. But he like uses the example of you two going and playing Miss Sarajevo in uh,
Hmm.
in Sarajevo during the war, and
Yeah.
all the local Serbians being like, this is great, but come on, man, we can
Right.
you get to go home, and part of the way that politics has changed and dissolved is that it just kind of permeates everything now,
Hmm.
right? Like there is no element of our lives that is not in some way engaged with politics, and yet nothing is engaged with politics because nothing that we do actually matters.
Like impacts it or changes the system, but everything
Yeah,
feels like tied in or connected to it. Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
So it is really hard to like walk around and be like, I loved Poor Things. Uh, I mean, maybe I've felt the impact of the. I mean, you can't even call it a war in Palestine, right? But like the
Hmm.
conflict in Gaza, kind of strangely because I live in a Jewish neighborhood, which is right next to
Okay.
the I don't know this for certain, but definitely like my neighborhood has one of the highest Jewish populations in
Hmm.
America. So there's a lot of pro-Israel sentiment just in my like day-to-day life. Like walking to the grocery store, I pass hostage
Hmm.
posters and stuff. And then if I walk into the adjacent neighborhood, I don't think that it's the number one Muslim population area in Pittsburgh, but
But it's up there.
it's a
Sure.
really high Muslim population relative to the rest of the city, because there's so many students and people who work in medicine there. It's where University of Pittsburgh is.
Hmm.
And like, so walking from like one neighborhood to another is just like light years difference in how everything is treated. And it's like a real interesting example of how just consensus reality doesn't seem to exist
Yeah, well, and it's you have
in
the diasporas are both, like engaged in this conflict from afar. You know.
yeah, they're both living out this conflict vicariously in some
Hmm.
sense. Like they're both, to the extent that like both of them are involved. I mean, I mean, I've met people on both sides of it who are like, yeah, my cousin is in the IDF, or my cousin is trapped in Gaza and we haven't heard from her in 5 days.
Yeah.
In ways that are like really hard to quantify, I think, for anyone who does not experience that sort of
Hmm.
diaspora identity. But it is very much like it's in the air, you
Yeah.
know. It's like they're the like little psychic particles coming off of that and radiating off of everything are just, you know, literally in like the geography of the city, you know, as I'm
Hmm.
living in it, are making everything seem permeated by conflict in a way that, like, simultaneously, the Armenian, you know, the ethnic cleansing in Nagorno-Karabakh just doesn't
Hmm.
seem to exist. And the war in Ukraine doesn't seem to be happening anymore, as people have forgotten
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, it's yeah, that's really interesting because yeah, there is kind of like there are some conflicts that seem to be in the air and others that aren't. And I don't have a good answer for why Israel Palestine is the one right now. Maybe, I mean, probably just the US's involvement is a big part of it, but like yeah, it feels like this conflict is just been in the air in a way that other ones haven't. Like at least, I
Yeah.
mean, since us being actually at war, honestly, I have not felt this like weight of the air being political since, like, I mean, I was a kid during like the war on terror,
Yeah.
frankly, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think the only thing I can say that I felt that like remotely resembled it was the
Mhm.
2016 election.
Yeah, yeah.
Bro, because I grew up in, as I know you did too, grew up in Trump country. Um,
Mhm.
and there was a weird energy to all that
Yeah,
that
okay.
wasn't even like
That's a good
replicated.
point.
Well, that wasn't even like replicated in 2020, other than like
Mhm.
around the insurrection, which Insurrection Day was yesterday,
Oh yeah, Insurrection Day.
as we're recording.
Yeah.
Timely, but it feels it feels like that. Like it feels like there's these weird insurgent energies.
Hmm.
Like it materially, we are nowhere near Weimar, I
No.
think. No, like you know, we're gonna be okay. At least I
Hmm.
think we're gonna be okay. But like vibes wise, I get why people keep saying like late Weimar, you know?
Yeah, well, there's a real there's a bloodlust in the air that
Yeah.
unnerves me, you know? There's a I don't know. There's and this is going to make me sound like a total lib. But I think there's truth to it. There is a absolute universal sense of institutional failure, like that
Yeah.
the norms of democracy or whatever just don't really matter. And there's like a sense that that's kind of like everyone just kind of knows that. Now, I'm to be clear, I'm not saying the institutions were good or that the norms were good, but I can say like them dissolving still feels really weird.
Well, the institutions don't have to be good for them to like function.
Right.
You know, like, uh, you know, we might be living in, you know, one of the most unequal states in the world, and you know, prison rates may be high, but at least the trash is getting collected. You know,
Hmm. Right,
like
right.
like every like your day-to-day life is not being impacted, and it's beginning to feel like day-to-day life is being impacted in a way that I haven't felt it since 2016.
Yeah.
It's like seeping into
I
everything.
Yeah, I had I knew somebody through my church, which growing up evangelical, it's really interesting being in a, lib mainline denomination now, where
Yeah.
there some of the elderly people were like hippies at one point or something, because they're more likely to be, I wouldn't say far left, but on the vague left, in the
Right,
kind of
right.
liberal mainline denominations. And anyway, I there was somebody I was talking to, a priest actually, who she was a some sort, at least somewhat active in the 60s and 70s with the protest movements and stuff. And what she said has like fucked with me. And I don't know if I've said this on Fruitless before or not, so I might be retelling something, but she made a comment where she said, "Today feels a lot like the late 60s, early 70s. Today feels a lot like that again. But the only difference is that period had all the hate, the all the hatred, all the sense that things are about to cave in. But there was also like that hippie optimism, there was Woodstock. There was a sense that, well, if we all came together, we could fix this. In
Yeah,
the modern era,
acid communism, if you will.
but yes, but as the modern era here is like that period without the hope, without the Woodstock. And that is the most fucking haunting thing an older person has told me.
Yeah,
Someone who was
Yeah.
alive for that era, you know what I mean? Like,
Well, you know what's fucking crazy is, we've got an unpopular. I mean, he's not a wartime president in the same way that LBJ was a wartime president,
no, but
right?
but
Like,
he's
we're
got
not.
he's got Ukraine and
You
Israel
got, yeah,
happening. Two
all of
pro-
which is unpopular.
proxy
People,
wars, maybe. I don't know if the
yeah,
right word. Yeah,
I don't think we should call Gaza a proxy war.
proxy
In part
genocide.
because it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the thing about I think I have a kind of unpopular take about Biden's relationship to Israel, which seems to be that I don't think it's like a proxy war, because definitely like killing thousands upon thousands of people in Gaza is not doing anything for like US
Mhm.
material interests. I mean, like, Ukraine, yeah, that's a proxy war in the sense that we're like at war
Mhm.
with Russia. Um, but it seems to me that like Biden's relationship to Israel is along the lines of like 20th century special relationship type stuff, where it's,
Mhm.
because of the legacy of, the relationship to the Jewish people in World War II, we have to protect Israel at all costs. Um,
Mhm.
no matter what, they're our friends in the same way that like Great Britain is our friend that we have to protect.
Mhm.
Which just is not a political reality for anyone on the left who is under the age of like 65 anymore. But unfortunately,
Yeah.
Biden is in his 80s.
So we're just
Yeah.
gonna.
Well, I think you're right, because I think no, I don't think there is an American geopolitical, like, anything they're actually getting out of this war with Gaza. What they have is, though, a material interest in continuing to support Israel as an American
That's
foothold
true.
in the Middle
Yeah.
East. And so then I think that fits what you're saying, though, where like, Biden is cynically supporting the genocide in Gaza because he has to continue supporting this state for geopolitical reasons, which I think is almost more coldly evil. It's not like a violent revenge fantasy or something. It is just a cold numbers based. Well, we got to back them,
Yeah.
and
And
I guess they'll do what they want.
yeah, and it is interesting how, I mean, Biden and Blinken have to some degree indicated to Netanyahu, apparently, that like, hey, we don't like that you're doing this, but it's very clear that they're not going to do anything to stop it, besides sending people over and, sort of wagging the finger at Netanyahu. But a big part of that is also just, I mean, I don't know much about Israeli domestic politics, but my understanding is that the war in Gaza is extremely popular and people want it to continue in Israel in such a way that, like, even if all US aid were cut tomorrow,
Yeah.
it's unclear, particularly with the state that Gaza is now in. It's unclear that anything would stop, which is probably the most horrifying part, is that
Mhm.
just that things are now in motion that cannot be stopped if anybody wanted them to, and none of the people in power want them to
Want to.
stop. Yeah.
And see, I feel like this conversation has just captured the exact problem that we've been facing here with, like I was talking about with the Substack, but just in general, this kind of like discourse about media right now is like, now how do we go back? You know what I mean? After
Yeah.
what we just discussed, you know what I mean? And it feels like every strand, anytime I'm even talking about a movie, it just goes back to like this background thing that we just all know is taking place right now.
Yeah.
I,
Yeah, and it's all of this is happening
In the background of now an election year. We've reached 2024 and it's going to be Trump versus Biden too.
mm-hmm.
I don't even want to call it electric boogaloo. It just sucks.
Yeah, it does.
It is 2020 but worse. 2020 but Biden is going to have to campaign in person 4 years older.
Yeah, right. 2020 but with no Bernie figure.
Yeah, 2020 no Bernie.
So no sense of hope, like, oh, we might be able to do it, guys. We might be able to save the republic.
I don't think anything has felt right since Super Tuesday in 2020.
No. No. Oh,
and
man.
yeah, just to further the LBJ comparison, guess where the DNC is going to be held this summer?
Where? I actually don't know this.
It's in Chicago.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh
So we've got an unpopular wartime president facing an extreme discontent from the left-wing youth of his own party, who will be having a DNC in Chicago where he will not be a contested candidate, but he will be facing a contest, because I'm sure that there's going to be some sort of massive protest event, considering what people were able to do in DC a few months ago. I mean, I had friends who bussed to DC from Pittsburgh to go to.
I mean, you got me considering whether I want to make that drive at the very least, just to be there to see what happens. Because I mean, it's really close to me. It's like 5 hours from me.
I've considered going just to be there. It's like the week before my classes start next year. Really, really weird, like pre-May 68 vibes just going on everywhere.
I don't know what to make of it, because I think I have a cynical part of me that kind of feels like, well, this is just kind of how things feel now, and there isn't gonna be a big explosive year. But I also have a real dooming side of myself as well that's like, well, I think this is the year everything falls apart, and I just don't know what to make of those two kind of conflicting impulses in my head.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, this is almost certainly going to be like the last gerontocracy presidential election for a while.
Yeah.
Because like all of the people who are stepping up to be the next set of like leadership figures in each party are middle-aged. And there's, I mean, if Biden's what, 82?
Something like that. Yeah. Old as shit.
Yeah, well, if he wins, he terms out. He's 81. Okay. He'll be 82 in November. So
yeah.
If he wins, he will be an 82-year-old president, and he'll be termed out, and he can't win. And at 86, I can't think of an established Democratic figure who would be able to step in to run as being like who is his generation. I mean, like the next oldest set of people I can think of are like Kamala.
Yeah.
I mean, on the Republicans, like DeSantis is like 45.
Yeah. There is the new generation is finally kind of switching over here in the last few years. It kind of feels like,
unfortunately, they are for the most part also awful.
Well, right, because the problem is it's not like okay, now the millennials are taking over. It's like now we're getting Gen X.
Yeah, we're getting we're getting the most useless generation. We're getting the Richard Linklater generation. Taking the reins. Finally. They've been waiting for their parents to die for so long. Which is an interesting parallel to what's going on in media too. Which is that like we do have a ton of like boomer artists of all kinds still dominating. I mean, mostly in ways that are like beneficial to the world. Like Martin Scorsese and Bob Dylan, like still doing work.
Yeah, still doing good stuff.
Yeah, still doing good. Why couldn't they be in politics?
I I mean, genuinely.
I'd vote for
mean,
Dylan. Like,
yeah.
yeah,
I'd vote for Marty, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
I'd vote for Marty for president after the ending of Killers of the Flower Moon.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's a guy that understands a lot of the worst parts of America. I don't think he would want to be a politician, is the problem. I don't think he would
no, and
realize
it would
that.
be a Bernie situation where like there's no world in which Bernie as president does not wind up commanding at least one drone strike. You know?
Yeah, right. Well, because the system is, yeah.
Yeah. Which I will say for Biden, he has like accomplished enough things that if it weren't for the, massive blemishes on his record that are going to completely fuck him up with young people at the polls, he has had enough like minor quiet accomplishments that I would otherwise be really happy to vote for him if he weren't, going to be 82 on election day.
Yeah, yeah, I do agree with that.
Like
Well,
ending the drone war, making minor progress on climate change.
mhm.
I'd be like, okay, if this is our guy, we have to vote for him. Unfortunately, he is funding a genocide. So
Yep. Yep. Well, okay, here's how we can slowly work our way back. One thing I was thinking about, if we're talking about this, 2023 in media, that also kind of could be social media here, right? So like, what about that? We're both pretty online, I'd say. How is this year in social media?
Actually, this really does tie into the politics thing because
Yeah,
I wanted to say this earlier when we were discussing like why does this feel ambiently worse than ever before, and it's like social media is it's partially that we're both incredibly online and like I'm OCD and like everything is like obsessive. So I mean that's a big part of it, but that's also a big part of like youth polarization too. And it is interesting. I feel, I mean, this might be the thing that gets me canceled. Is that, I mean, there is disinformation about the war in Gaza going on, being spread in left-wing spaces. Not the way there was about Ukraine, but it's like, it is present.
It's there.
Sure, it's there. Yeah. It's there enough that like your Lisa Simpson cousin is like seeing it and falling for it. It's there enough that like, I mean, you and I were talking about that one like Christian influencer lady who has gone completely off the rails.
Yeah, yeah.
And I mean, like now doing like the protocols of the elders of Zion, but woke.
Yeah, there is I think that like there's been a tendency to act like there isn't any anti-Semitism on the left. Rather than, I mean, like, I do think that like right-wing anti-Semitism is significantly more pronounced and it's annoying that it's just getting ignored now.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, to act like there isn't like some of it floating around, like it's there. I mean, I have a Twitter account. I've read fucking people like resurrecting the Khazar theory of Jews. Like,
yeah,
it's there.
Or
it
like,
sucks.
Or like Bree Newsom and her little posse of like woke DEI instructers being like the doctor plot again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like I can't trust my Zionist doctor. It's like great. We've just resurrected the Soviet use of Zionist to, refer to Jews. I mean, a big part of that though is just that, I mean, I think that like this has always been the case. Like I'm gonna put my little philosophy grad student hat and be like on and be like, Plato, called all of this when he was talking about like how democracy works. But it is like true that a lot of people are just not discerning enough about information to be able to function in a democratic society. And the thing about social media is that it has amplified that to the point where everyone's stupid opinions are in your face all of the time. And if you're the sort of person which apparently is like a huge chunk of young people in particularly, and also old people, it's age polarized, right?
We're the only good age.
Yeah. Well, I'm very close. I am very close in age with Zoomers.
Well, and I think you and I are the same about almost the exact. No, how old are you?
I was born in 2000. I'm like 3 years younger than you.
Jesus, I didn't know that. I actually did not know that. Okay.
I will be 24 in like a month.
Okay. Okay. I'm 26 and will be 27 later this year. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. I mean, I would
So
still
I'm like
say
I'm
roughly the same age category, though. I
yeah,
would
yeah, yeah,
say,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Where I'm old enough to remember a time before everyone had a cell phone.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
And it's like, it is cliche to be like, the Zoomers on TikTok who don't, follow the news, but it's like true, you know. I mean,
Mhm.
if you're getting your news from TikTok, you're not getting the news. Like you need to learn to read. I'm
Yes.
sorry. Because if you don't, you will start doing the doctor plot again.
Right. Right.
But
Well,
whoa.
yeah, and I mean, I don't know. I feel like with the nature, like I feel like I like a tinfoil hat to say this. It's like tinfoil hat shit to say it, but like it is just true. Like people fuck with these algorithms and like not like TikTok is fucking with them for Chinese conspiracies or what, not like that. But I mean,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
people intentionally stir shit up. Like I am almost certain we're like a year out from finding out like some troll group that was responsible for the like random Osama bin Laden praise that started happening on TikTok a month or two ago. Like I just
Oh, I do remember that.
yeah, you remember
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I memory hold that one. That
No, they
oh
were all
God.
like they all read his letter to America and it was critical of American Empire
Yeah, yeah, right,
and
right.
nobody has apparently ever read any criticisms of American Empire before, so they thought it was really fantastic.
Well,
Um
they have read them. They just read them as text on some like weird TikTok video that also had subway surfers going in the background for
right.
some fucking reason. And they were like, then they read the Osama bin Laden thing because it's only like 3 paragraphs, and they were like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. It's just like
yeah,
I
going.
I, I but like I wouldn't be surprised if some troll group is responsible for that or
Oh yeah,
something.
yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
or
Going back and reading the protocols of the elders of Zion and thinking, God damn, these guys they were
yeah.
really onto something about
Whoa,
the
they were real decolonial. Fucking
yeah,
shit.
yeah,
So
right.
that shit scares me. My only hope is that this
Yeah.
is just like a whether they're just young problem and that by the time we're just seeing the stupidest opinion because I remember the
Yeah,
stupidest shit I both said and heard when I was like a 13, 14-year old on Tumblr. Okay, like I remember that shit. And
yeah,
so I do know that there's some degree that that's probably what's happening with TikTok now.
yeah. But then like I meet people who are like 25 and falling for this stuff. Like I don't know. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
like I do think a big part of it's an age problem, particular but like
Mhm.
the age problem thing is like Twitter people who are mostly right wing, I think.
Mhm.
Like it's like 4chan 13, 14 year olds. I feel like the TikTok thing really does cross age boundaries.
Mhm.
I mean, the
That's
the
true. That's
lady,
true.
the lady, I have no idea how I pronounce her name, but I think it's Sarah Rao.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, she was the one who posted the like doctor's plot, the like you can't trust Zionist
Yeah,
doctors
that's true. Yeah.
thing, and
No, those were
she's
higher
like
up.
50. You are
Yeah.
an adult. Now, I'm sure that a significant amount of the people being like, "Oh, so true," were 12, but I'm also sure that a significant amount of them were like way too old to be falling for
Falling
that.
for this.
Because it's
Yeah.
all the same people who are also like, I was never taught about the Trail of Tears in my high school history class. And it's like, no, you were. Like,
Yeah,
I
like
was
there
there.
are cases where like okay, yeah, like the there definitely isn't enough indigenous history in American curriculums. Of course, there is not enough like labor history. But when somebody's like, I didn't know that the Civil War was caused by slavery. I'm like, okay, that was you not paying attention in
Yeah,
class.
you just
That
smoked
was
you were smoking pot before your first period history class. Like that's what happened there.
yeah. I didn't know the Trail of Tears happened. Really? Because that's like
Yeah.
the only one they usually talk about. Like the only indigenous issue that classrooms talk about.
Yeah, that's how to say. I do. Yeah, so like the uh, ambient psychic horrors, I think, are coming from the screen. They're
Hmm.
they're emanating from there, and
Hmm.
it's. I think that's actually a big part of why everything feels so terrible is like the end of
any sort of consensus reality. Which I
Mhm.
mean, we've known that since like literally since well before the storming of the Capitol in 2021.
Well, I mean,
Right? Like,
postmodern theorists were saying that about like the 90s. Like this has been
yeah,
coming for a minute. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
It's hard to say when like if there's a definitive moment that it's like over,
yeah,
but it's like 2023.
it
It's
seems over.
yeah. Well, I'm old enough
and have a long enough memory to remember when people were talking about the vibe shift in like 2022, you know,
Hmm.
in
Yeah.
2021.
and people have made fun of that for years, but I do think that like the vibe shifted at some point. And I think that 2023 was the first year like that the vibe had definitively shifted before the year started. And the year was just a deluge of shit in the new vibe. And now we're in 2024
Yeah.
and we're in
And I
year
have
2.
no idea what's coming. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you could maybe say something like there was a cultural reset that took place in 2020 and that it's really only been starting to come out in the last few years, just how much has like shifted.
Yeah. I mean, you always had hints, right? Like
Yeah.
the number like I was living in Nashville during the pandemic. So I can remember feeling like living like I was as a person who lived there, who
Mhm.
was yeah, I mean I was a milk a toast social democrat at that point too. So I guess I was
Mhm.
about the same the same politics that
Mhm.
I have now. But like as a person who was like wearing a mask to work and
Yeah.
stuff and like voting, planning to vote for whoever won the Democrat primary, and all of that.
Mhm.
I can remember feeling like I lived in a different world from people who flocked to Nashville because it didn't have COVID restrictions.
Yeah.
Like and I can remember like seeing the first inklings of like this is so embarrassing and it acknowledges how one super online I am. But like seeing the first inklings of what was going to become Times Square, you know, in New York,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah.
which is this. I don't think it's going to show up in history books, like, but it will be something that like future cultural historians like stumble across and be like, you know, what the fuck was
What was
going
going
on
on
here?
that? Yeah.
They took saying slurs and
Made an art scene, but
Yeah.
but like
the initial beginnings of a feeling that I was living in a very different world from a lot of other people uh,
Hmm.
were there, and I mean, they were already kind of present like even as early as like 2015, like if you were
Yeah.
talking with like a really diehard Trump person or something. But
Hmm.
even like back to the 90s, I'm sure, because Rush Limbaugh was such a
Well,
presence.
yeah, I think that like, yeah, if you want to talk about like, oh man, here's a fun lib cliche, polarization. I think that's been going on since the 90s. But
But
um
it becomes
something's
material.
different.
It
Yeah, the
becomes it
material manifestation of it feels like Trump, like a Trump era thing to
Yeah,
me. It
and then
starts.
like really a COVID era thing is the
Mhm.
first time that it's like, no, I'm literally living a different life from you
Mhm.
because I have chosen to live in the real world.
Right, because I'm behaving as if this pandemic is real and you are not.
Yeah,
Like you're going and you and also most of the people you hang around are also not. And so
yeah,
you're all just literally doing your thing. And I've been quarantined for months or something like that.
yeah.
That's a real shit.
I have not left my house other than to go to work or school for 8 straight months, and
Yeah.
you are still doing coke. I have not taken off my mask in the presence of a human being I don't live with. And you are regularly sticking drugs up your nose
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
a
Well,
crowded basement full of strangers.
yeah. I mean, I remember like because I was in college during 2020 also. How many people I knew that just kept partying the whole
Yeah.
time, like truly. And yeah, we didn't have any bars shut down or anything in Des Moines, so just people just kept doing things.
Downtown Nashville was like they tried to close it. But the one of the guys, I think it's like the main real estate owner
Mhm.
of most of the bars is mostly the same dude in the main like honky tonk tourist strip. And he
Mhm.
must have done some calculation that he was making so much money from keeping his places open that he could pay any fine they threw at him. That like health
Mm.
inspectors were literally coming through every day and fining them. And it didn't even matter. Like
It didn't matter.
nothing shut down. And eventually the city just gave up.
Oh my God. Well,
Yeah.
yeah, but I think, yeah, to pull it back to this year though, I think that probably does speak to a material difference of like literal consciousness kind of splitting
Yeah.
between people who spent 2020 really not changing their lifestyle at all, and those of us who 2020 was a genuine turning point year.
Yeah.
Um, and then for me, and then the flip side, I mean, the protests were, I think, a big part of my political development.
Yeah.
And that was its own, own a whole thing there. And I think that was a consciousness building thing. And I think that's going to have, I mean, there's a chance that the amount of protest and discontent with Biden about Israel Palestine wouldn't have been as extreme if the 2020 protests hadn't happened. I
No,
think.
I don't. I think it's all the same people for the most
Yeah,
part.
because
I
I
mean,
think
you have a new influx of people who were in like high school during 2020 and couldn't really get super involved, but like it's all the same people involved, which is like another
Mhm.
like 60s kind of thing.
Yeah, because
Like,
like 2020 could be a 68 parallel or something where suddenly you have a huge chunk of people that have experienced tear gas, and
yeah,
like that's going to change how they, even if they end up just moderate libs, how they look at the world.
yeah. Well, another thing about it is you have a generation who have kind of been radicalized. Like I would push back on saying that like Gen Z are not just libs.
No, I meant even
Yeah.
if long term they end up that way, it would still be
Oh,
informative, is what I mean.
no, yeah, I agree with that.
Mhm.
No, what I mean is like you have this generation of like left-leaning people who in the same way that like lefties in the 60s, you know, were moved left, just kind of radically moved left as a generation by a set of movements that were happening. You have the same thing going on, I think, with a lot of people like my age, slightly older than me and slightly younger than me,
Mhm.
um, in such a way that like I think that for a lot of people who I personally know and who I like see all of the time, because it's always the same, repetitions and ideas and variations of the same slogans and all that.
Mhm.
Um, they don't view like the struggle for Palestine and the struggle for Black liberation as different. And I don't mean that in the way that
Mhm.
like Black scholars will be like, indigeneity is a concept that like applies here and applies there, and it's all one struggle to get free. I mean literally in some like phenomenological sense of how young people are
Perceive it.
interacting with the world, right? It is all just protest, you know, in one
Mhm.
in one direction in a way that like doesn't necessarily have explicit goals or aims.
Yeah, and that's the dark side of this. Maybe not dark
Yeah.
side, but the uncomfy side to me is, so I have to see what I think about it. I haven't read it yet. But Vincent Bevins' new book,
Oh, he's really good.
If We Burn: The Mass Protest Decade and the Missing Revolution. And what I've heard of the book thus far, but still haven't read it yet, is that he's actually really critical of the kind of developed protest culture that's developed, that it since Occupy doesn't do anything. It's just a release valve.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I
that's like
can't, I don't know.
that's a kind of a classical Marxist critique,
Hmm.
right? Would be that you can't like that was I think it was Fourier that was his response to about 48 was
Hmm.
like we have to understand revolutions as something that develop as a tectonic shift, and you need to like if you're going to overthrow capitalism or you're going to overthrow the government, you can't have it burn off in liberal protest movements, right? Because the energy will just go away, and you need that like kinetic buildup of force. Now I got to read this freaking Bevins book.
I know. I don't now. I want to say I've not read the book, and so I think that his argument, because I know Bevins, is going to be much better than that.
Yeah.
Because at least I've read Jakarta Bethid is amazing. So
that is an amazing book.
I don't want to minimize his point, because I think in that crude form I don't quite agree, because I fall in kind of the Luxembourg camp, that I think this kind of shit builds consciousness, and that long term can have an impact. So like the liberal victories and stuff are good because it teaches workers and builds consciousness that we can actually win victories.
Right. Yeah.
And that, that's more, I think, my position. But I do understand the idea of, especially after 2020, because I saw the protests not do anything. And I really saw that kind of begin to just fail by the end of the summer of 2020.
Yeah. I mean, a big part of the reason I think that it does fail is that a lot of these movements don't really have interior and exterior like elements to them. Like that's one thing that was really, really successful about the civil rights movement. And a lot of like hard leftists are going to get very mad at me for saying this. I think because there is there's a school of thought that has taken hold about, relative to like, well, you have to have the like militant wing. And the militant wing is what like scares, the upper class into giving concessions. And the soft core of the movement is less important. But like one of the key elements of the civil rights movement is, first of all, that they did have the militant wing, but also like the soft core had actual economic targets.
Right. Like MLK is still considered hardcore now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
compared to anything anyone is doing. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, there is no hardcore to the American left, really.
Yeah. But they also had people who were working and like writing legislation and doing all the boring shit too. Right. Like they had people who were going in and like doing proto lobbying work. Like that was a part of like the leadership of how the civil rights movement succeeded. And there isn't really a lot of that. There's a lot of like trying to get sympathetic aides in the House to maybe convince an ancient Chuck Grassley or whoever to vote yes on a resolution to perhaps have some senators wear kente cloth one day,
Right.
But there is not really that. And there's a whole lot of militant posturing, but there isn't a whole lot of militants.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like there are always dudes who show up to the big marches and they're like doing the black bloc thing.
Yeah.
And, like maybe they like are carrying a gun or whatever, but they're not doing anything.
Yeah. Generally. I mean, I don't want to write off the ones that do, but like generally no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, anytime that somebody like actually bombs an oil pipeline, it makes front page news.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't happen very much.
Which, like, if the number of times that people talked about mailing pipe bombs to politicians, were remotely true, we wouldn't see it on the news anymore. It would.
Right.
Unfortunately, the far right does not seem to be as divorced from genuine militant tactics. Like if some weird guy on a far right Discord starts talking about doing a shooting, he might actually do it.
He might actually do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
But the left seems kind of divorced from like actual active
Stuff.
politics in that sense. And I do think a big part of it is like the hyperpolitics.
Everything feels political.
Everything feels political. So me walking down the street with a sign chanting is political. But it isn't, right? Like, not in the sense of like it's actually going to stop anything.
Okay, so I this is something that comes to mind. So being really active in the 2020 protests, right? I saw a lot of the like clash against the cops. And then I've only been to one Palestine rally thus far because there hasn't been a lot in Des Moines. Um,
Mm, yeah.
but in the one I did attend, it was really good and it was really moving. But there's something I have also been bothered about, not by the organizers or anyone involved, but just something that struck me during it, which was we ended up kind of replicating something that happened on one of the worst nights of 2020, which was marching up to the Capitol building, and there were like, riot cops and shit like that. And then they, moved in and arrested everyone, tear gassed everyone. I was,
Yeah.
running through Des Moines for like an hour trying to find a way to get home without getting arrested. It was a nightmare, right? So we had the same thing where we had marched throughout the city and then finally stopped at the point in the same point where we were in front of the Capitol building. And there was some
Yeah.
of the chants that you see in a lot of the Palestine rallies lately, like the insert politician, you can't hide, you're supporting genocide, stuff like that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
That's been targeted at Fetterman a lot in
yeah,
Pittsburgh. Yeah.
and we were targeting at frankly every Iowa politician, frankly.
Yeah.
And so
Wow.
yeah, doing those chants, but I realized that it felt more ineffective than in 2020 because when we were fighting the cops, the riot cops were right there, and who we were chanting at was right there. But
Yeah.
there were no cops. They knew that we weren't going to do anything. And so it was just us chanting at an empty Capitol building. And I just remember going like, this is it, right? They just know that that we won't be able to stop them.
Yeah. No, I've noticed that. I
Yeah.
mean, there was an occupation of the Senate Plaza or the Tennessee like State House Plaza in in 2020. I went to like one event there and I took supplies a bunch. I was still like freaked out about COVID. But I went to the two big marches that were in Nashville. And I remember like I could feel it getting more and more out of hand. Like the first march developed into a riot that I wasn't there for. I wound up walking the way that like didn't become a riot.
Oh, okay.
It like forked. And people like I was on the one that followed the pre-planned police path, and then some people like forked off and started rioting in the other direction.
That really bad night in 2020, something like that happened where we split and I ended up being in the riot group. Oops.
Yeah. But there was also a significant like I remember when it started getting like really really personal with police was the other thing that I think was different about 2020 was it was turning into like a group of activists who were there who were like consistently, and I mean I knew a bunch of them and like, but they were like consistently there, they were leading everything, and they like were one-on-one to the point where they like cops knew them individually.
That happened in Des Moines as well. Yeah.
And nothing like that is happening related to Palestine. Partially, I mean, a big part of that is probably because like protesting police personally. I think.
Well, yeah, and when you go in and if you're storming any political buildings near you or whatever, you have an aim. You want them to defund the police. You know what I mean? You have like a material thing. As Palestine, it feels a little more abstract. I think there are concrete things you can do, but it feels more abstract because it's so far away.
It's farther away. I mean that's definitely a big part of it. But another is that a lot of people don't. I think that a lot of the people showing up in the Palestine struggles don't seem to want to do much more than just show that they're there. Like it's much more of a like leftist in-group thing, as opposed to like, I mean, I knew a lot of like libs who got really involved in Black Lives Matter up to a certain point. I mean, when it toward the end, when it started getting like really out there, a lot of those people fell away. I mean, that's really
but the initial rallies, and I think a lot of them got radicalized by getting to witness police violence firsthand and stuff like that. But yeah, this I think in part like a lot of the push toward nonstop accusations of anti-Semitism toward anyone for anything through this has done a really good job of making this feel like a hard issue for, I think, your more moderate liberals to want to go out for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's that's definitely a big part of it. But there's also a sense in which like I really do think that the Palestine struggle is becoming like it's very dominated by like PSL types too.
Yes, it is. It is.
Like
the rally I went to was organized by the PSL.
Yeah, pretty much everything that I've been to has had like pretty big PSL involvement. DSA has like co-signed everything, but they're not really there.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the more like mainstream groups aren't really involved with it, and it's like actual like Palestinian people who are involved, and then like Jews for peace.
Mm-hmm.
And then like PSL.
Yeah.
And really like Jews for Palestine on like college campuses, and like Students for Justice in Palestine are both like left, like hard left feed groups, which is not in like any sort of like bad conspiratorial like they're turning all the college kids left. I mean, it's just like true that like they are like
openly far left organizations. Right.
Yeah. That's their goal. Which is fine. I think that's great personally. Co-signed. But I think that like the drive coming from there, as opposed to like BLM, really felt like a coalition issue.
It felt like you got the libs and the communists all in the streets together for the most part.
And toward the end, like I remember there was a definitive like shift at some point over the BLM summer where it was like 4th of July in Nashville, they did this big march. And it was like, we want to celebrate pride for everything that's not America, because we don't like America. So bring your national flags unless it's an American flag. Don't bring that. Like, and that was like, I mean, it was kind of a minor detail, but it was definitely like this is going, like, this is moving in a like more radical direction. Which again,
it's explicitly calling itself anti-American or whatever. Which again, I don't think you and I are pearl clutching about that by any means.
No, I don't give a shit. But like,
no, but that would be alienating to your run of the mill.
You're scaring the normies. Like you are. That's and part of the goal at that point is to scare the normies, right? Which is fine if you can come up with an accurate political program that is going to involve, like, we have to scare the normies because we have to get rid of all the normies so that we can actually start like fighting police or whatever. But they're not going to do that. And I personally am enough of a like lib, that at the end of the day I'm not going to go for a revolution. Like I don't think most of the people I know are going to actively go. Like I know maybe like 3 people who if it came down to it would actually like go to like start a revolutionary conflict with the United States government. So if we're actually like going to do politics, we have to involve the normies on some level. And they're not gonna like it if we start doing posturing that is explicitly about scaring them. That's all that it's about, And
it's hard because I don't want it to sound like it's pearl clutching to say this, but it is also, there is some just truth to it, right? Like you do need to have like popular positions.
Like I mean slogans like have become the focal point of discussion about this, which is stupid because I don't know anyone I don't know anyone who is like not just actually a conservative who I know who has held any resentment toward From the River to the Sea. Like everybody knows what that means.
Right.
Like the only people I know who actually don't like that are, just people who are really confused why we haven't nuked Gaza yet. Like
right.
That's the people who are pearl clutching over From the River to the Sea, and we really don't need to care what they think. But it is really interesting that like multiple rallies that I've gone to for Palestine have become just like the PSL guy gives his weird PSL stump speech. Um,
Mhm.
and but they become like public lectures, right? Like
Yeah.
it's like we have to educate everyone on the varieties of like leftism, and we have to like talk about
Oh, okay, that's
like
interesting because
there's
that's not how it played out here, but that's that okay, because I would find that kind of gross.
yeah
What you're describing there is what I'll say is yeah, ours turned into lectures, but they were generally various Muslims in the community telling us about like this is or a photojournalist who went to Gaza talking about what Gaza is like. It was like more like
yeah
that.
we had that mostly at the first one that I went to.
Okay.
It was like there were a couple of speakers, and then the they were trying like it was mostly like Muslims of Palestinian descent, like
Hmm.
talking about like their relative experience, or like one guy who had actually
Yeah.
grown up in Gaza. But then there were like two or three speakers that were like, there was one guy who was talking about like, I had a gun pulled on me in Akron, 2 days ago at the rally there. And it's like, I don't think that's true. Uh, you're making that up. I mean, first of all, but second of all, it was like, no, it was like a PSL guy whose entire job is to just like go around and give stump speeches at rallies. And then like the
Yeah.
local PSL guy got up and said some stuff that was like vaguely anti-Semitic. And,
Oh, great. Cool.
yeah,
Good work, guys.
yeah, good work, everybody. And then like this one girl got up and started talking about like her family, and that was genuinely like really good. And then we marched to the Muslim center in
Mm.
in that area, which was a really interesting choice,
Hmm.
um,
I usually
and
think of
like
where you're marching, you're going to the place you're confronting or something like that.
yeah.
But maybe that could be good too. I guess I just hadn't thought of it that way.
Well, I mean, it kind of speaks to what I think how a lot of people are treating the like. There was another march that went to like Arconic's factory, who apparently make a lot of like military materials for Israel. So they were like
Hmm.
going and picketing there, and there were a couple of pickets outside of Fetterman's office. I'll have to see what's going on when I get back. I've been
Yeah, yeah.
I've been a little bit out of it between like finals and everything.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, it did feel like a lot of the events that I went to were way more about like building a community of like re reinforcing leftist principles than like
Okay.
actively protesting things, or like
I can't
trying to
decide if
affect
that's good or not.
change.
Yeah, I don't know. Because on the flip side, I mean, on the other hand, there's a degree that it's like, well, if we can get we are getting these people out, and so getting them, connected and involved more and more is building some sort of left coalition. But on the flip side, like, why are we all out? Is this feels like it feels like a
Yeah.
fucking Amway meeting. Is you brought me out to protest
Yeah.
Palestinian solidarity, and now I'm fucking signing up to join PSL. Great, like,
Yeah,
or you're
right.
telling, you're asking me to.
I too can be a sex pest. Like uh sorry. Yeah, I also have personal like beef with PSL. But I mean, I do think that there's probably value in the approach, but it doesn't matter if it's not coupled with anything that like attempts to
Hmm.
get people in positions of power that can help us, or harass people who are in positions of power into like doing what we want.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, I think that gets back to ultimately like a way bigger issue, which is just the siphoning off of the political class into being like a class of its own. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
a big part of this is just that it's like no one wants to do anything because they feel like they can't do anything because they didn't get born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and they don't get to go to Harvard, and they don't get to, clerk for a Kennedy, and, you
Hmm.
know, go work and go, run for office, and or go join somebody's staff. Like you don't
Right, right.
if you're not a part of the machine, if you're not a part of the club, you don't get a say. Or at least, and I don't know if that's true, but it's how it feels.
It is how it feels. Yeah.
And
which is not to right, which is to say that which is unfortunately what matters, because if everybody doesn't believe that they can be elected or anything. Yeah.
Yeah. And if that's true, right, or if it's true that it feels like that, then all you can do is just register that you were a witness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what all of this is about, right? It's just like, we're going to march to show that we were there. We
witnessed it.
Yeah, we know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's depressing. I mean, first of all, but it's also, I mean, to bring it back to the media thing, I mean, I feel like it's a big part of why like Letterboxd and social media in general have taken off, is that, it increasingly feels, I don't know that this is true, that you don't get to have an opinion that matters if you're not in a certain class of our society. Right? That feels like it's a class. If you're not, and it's like, even if you're an upper middle class person, or like you were born upper middle class, you're never going to break into it, right? You have to be a person who went to the right schools, or did the right thing, or had the right dad who knew the right people. That's all that it's about. That's how you break in. And if you don't get to break in, your opinion doesn't matter. But we've also invented all of these tools where you can scream into the void.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, this is totally right, because this is true with both just art and politics. You know what I mean? Because this is, because it's like, I will never be a famous filmmaker, so why bother learning that skill? You know what I mean? Or
meanwhile, Emerald Fennell gets to like do whatever she wants.
Right, exactly. Like, so all I can do is be mad about that on Letterboxd into the void, and maybe there, people will see that I witnessed something I don't like, or see that I've witnessed something I do like, but that's it.
And it's universally true. I mean, it's not like determinative by your politics, because this is a big part of why online right wingers get radicalized.
Yeah,
right?
and
then
it manifests in just like losing their mind because like a Skittle is gay on a commercial.
Right. Or
because that's all that's real. That's all they can. Yeah.
Or like, getting mad that their trad wife hasn't arrived in the mail.
Right. Right.
Which is I mean, that's before we started recording, we were talking about like Substack has a Nazi problem. Which I mean, this is a big part of why like everywhere just kind of has a Nazi problem, is that anti-Semitism is the poor man's dialectical materialism, right? Like,
right.
Or like, Trumpism, I guess, is the poor man's Bernie Sanders, Only in this case, it's not like poor man. It's the landed
middle
gentry.
petite bourgeois, like guy who owns a car dealership.
Guy who makes $500K but is really, really mad that his daughter's dating a black dude.
Right. Right. Yeah. Guy who's got a pretty solid suburban thing, but like is convinced that Jews are using microplastics to make his daughter non-binary or something.
Right. If George Soros would stop doing his thing, then my daughter would love me again, like,
right. But so, I mean, returning back to the Substack thing. Yeah, I mean, you're just right that everywhere has a Nazi problem. That's why I've been kind of thrown off by the whole Substack Nazi problem thing. Is I do think it's there, but like I've seen a lot of like John Gans is controversial, I know, so I understand if people hate him, but I love John Gans.
No, this is a safe space. This is
okay. You're also a Gans fan.
Yeah, I'm on the Gans fan.
You're on the Gans. No, he had a response to this. His Substack responded to the whole Nazi thing, and he's like, this is like, because there was this push going on, and he was getting hit with it. Was like people saying you should leave Substack because of the Nazis here, because they're not doing enough to moderate the Nazis. And he's like, what? So then just turn Substack into a Nazi spot? Like that's what it does. If everybody leaves Substack, then that just means that's now the Nazi website.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Which is literally what's happening on Twitter.
more and more, like, it's becoming
Yeah.
less and less like palatable to be of anything left of center right.
Yeah. It's like I see more and more posts that are just like right-wing drivel, like every day.
Yeah.
Or they're like AI sex bots, you know.
In part
Or
because, you know, people, things like Blue Sky and shit sprung up, and people have been moving to that, even if that's, you know, which I understand.
Threads. I get it, but the juice is never going to be there. Like it's never going to be the same. But everywhere has a Nazi problem. There is just no good answer anymore.
Yeah.
I feel like, I mean, part of the problem is that, you know, we just kind of have to like acknowledge that we don't have any power over this, over any of it, right? Like, because that's the first step to admitting that like words are not magical.
Yeah.
Right. Like the first step is to, because like there is, I'm not, I forget like where I'm pulling this from, but somebody has said word magic in relation to like leftist claims before. But it is true that like we do like tend to believe that if we just come up with the right combination of magic words and chant them, the world is going to be like fixed.
Yeah.
And the first step to getting away from that is admitting that no, we can't fix any of this.
Yeah, we're not going to have a revolution on Twitter. There's no way, you know, that like we're not going to start Substack 2.0 and that's going to be the vanguard party.
Like, no, and we're not going to do that with like having a bunch of speakers gather in the park and talk about how bad everything is. Like at some point you actually have to do something. Which is, I mean, you know, which I will say for like PSL, like they are actually doing things. It's just that they do them so divorced from like any practical political program that it's like not functionally an option. And that's like, and I say all this, and I'm just gonna go home and like post on my little Substack, you know, my personal Nazi platform. You know,
I mean, this is I think why this conversation has been really interesting, even though like, you know, we wanted to focus on like, 2023 in media, but it's become it's a little meta now at this point. I think that's a thing.
Yeah, I think that we've been talking about this longer than we actually talked about movies.
Yeah, and that's fine, because I think the thing is, okay, at the end of the day, my skills and also what I do is predominantly produce media. Right. Like, that's my at least hobby. It doesn't make me enough money to be my job, but it's the thing I do with my time is produce media in some sort, whether it's what, you know, this podcast you're listening to right now, whether it's, you know, the YouTube video essay or the Substack I write. But I'm also damn well aware that I'm enough of a materialist to know that I'm not causing anything, you know, by doing this. Necessarily, right?
Words, like words are not magical. Like
and you know, I can tell myself things that I do believe are also true, which is that like I do think consciousness raising is a thing. I do think that the left-wing shift we have witnessed culturally is in part a result of media as well, and adjusting media. I don't think it's just material conditions necessarily, and so I can defend myself on that front. But at the end of the day, like I know the extent of like this only goes so far. You know, like listening to every fucking leftist podcast out there only goes so far. Now you might know what's going on in the news, but it's not like we're not changing anything. All we know how to do is talk and analyze.
Yeah. I mean, I really liked probably the only podcast that I've listened to that I actually liked talking about the Gaza situation was Michael S. Judge. When he did an episode of Death is Just Around the Corner about called Eyeless in Gaza. I think it's unpaywalled if anyone wants to go listen to it. He's on Patreon only, but this one's in front of the paywall. And he I mean his ultimate take was like, yeah, there's literally nothing we can do. So it's our job to be eyes in Gaza. And like Eyeless in Gaza is a line from Samson Agonistes by John Milton, where like Samson has been blinded and he's, you know, pushing on the pillars So he is literally standing there eyeless in Gaza, and the whole world has decided to be eyeless about Gaza. So it is our job, as it is the only thing we can do, to be eyes for Gaza. And I do think that that has some value, right? Like that it has to, because if it doesn't, I'm going to jump off a bridge tomorrow. Because
Right.
it's like,
it's,
but there has to be more.
There has to be more. This is the thing. I don't remember. This is so funny because I know this from a tweet from Luke Savage where he's paraphrasing a quote he half remembers. So this is a game of telephone. But the quote was that liberalism boils down to bearing witness to suffering. That's the only thing possible politically is to bear witness to suffering. And the thing that I'm torn about that quote is I think that there's also that's not necessarily bad. I think witnessing, like bearing witness to suffering is a good thing and needs to take place. You know what I mean?
Well,
but what you said is exactly it, right? There has to be something more.
Yeah. And there gets to be the question of like, how much can you do at the global scale, which is always, I think that like, if we want to get it into the even bigger issue, it's that like we live such interconnected lives in a nation. I mean, America alone is so big, right? Like it's very difficult. I'm expected to have, I guess no one's really expecting me because like, as we already established, my opinion doesn't matter. I'm a little amoeba in the grand scheme of scheme of, the violence of history. But like, I can have extremely strong opinions about what is happening related to land development in Berkeley, California. Right. And that's amazing compared to most of human history.
Yeah.
But it's also like, there is nothing I can do about that. And I'm sure that there are things I can do in my own community. Like I can feed the homeless, or I can get involved with my local, like I'm friends with one of the Democratic precinct chairs in Pittsburgh. And ultimately, like that's probably what like the actual future looks like, is what he does and did, which is go around. I mean, this is when everybody's still like John Fetterman. But when Fetterman was being elected, he just went around and knocked on doors in his precinct. And that sucks. It's not fun. Or, you give a buck to a homeless guy, every once in a while, and you go work at your local soup kitchen. And you watch the news and you try not to sob. And like, that's it, I mean, that was Mike Davis's like last message to everybody was like, what does real solidarity look like? It looks like giving up your seat to the woman with 3 kids who's getting on the bus.
Yeah, I do think that there's some truth to that, where it there is a degree that, well, what can you do? There are some initial steps, which is aid your fellow man, to be cliche, like you be part of the situation we're in right now, something we didn't even touch on, but is a big aspect of what we're talking about, is the erosion of communities. In public life, whatever, and kind of that getting pushed onto online, which is, has its positives, but is mostly a negative thing, I think. Like the biggest step, I think, like toward a long-term goal is those little ways that you can try to rebuild a sense of community and solidarity within your own life and with other people,
Yeah.
And that I don't think those are insignificant. I remember listening to something at one point about Allende in Chile before the Pinochet coup. And a big part of his what the historian that was getting interviewed, I'm going to put this in the show notes when I remember it all. Historian getting interviewed was saying was that this kind of democratic socialist boom that took place in Chile was met with a lot of these little everyday revolutions, which is not like going out and burning shit down necessarily, but just a guy learns to stand up to his boss for the first time because there is a general shift in consciousness taking place. People actually unionizing, and that's where I look at like the strikes taking place and stuff like that, and I do have a sense of hope about that.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, just like Chris Smalls as a figure, if we want to talk about like one dude.
Yeah.
I mean, there are people who are like active on the national political scene who give me a lot of hope. He's one. He pulled the fire alarm. He's a senator from New York, or representative from New York. Pulled the fire alarm. Jamal Bowman.
Right.
I love Jamal Bowman. Like, I'm a huge fan of Raphael Warnock. Oh, can you give me 1 second? Yeah. No, I mean, there are like individuals who are like, who things seem to be going really, really well. In some strange ways. And they're like little rays of light everywhere. There are, to quote the great Jordan Peterson, there are cathedrals everywhere for those with eyes to see. And
good.
Yeah, and like, in art, I mean, I think I do think all the time, and I thought about right after the march, or the one of the like things I went to see in Pittsburgh. I thought immediately about like the Didion quote as I was leaving from Slouching Toward Bethlehem, where she's like, at some point, we had set the rules of the game, but at some point we forgot the children how to play them, or we forgot to teach the children how to play the game by the rules that we had set. And I think about that a lot, but I also, I mean, I think a lot about how it does seem like there are these little rays of light everywhere.
Yeah. There is hope. It's not. Well, if you take Mark Fisher seriously, right? It's not whatever the future is something we can't imagine. We just physically can't. That doesn't mean we don't hope for it. We don't strive for it, right? But it's something we can't possibly envision. But it's coming. I mean, you can really sense whatever it is in the air, that there's something happening, whether that's, going to be, small scale or not. I don't know. I don't think that necessarily means the fall of the American Empire or something like that. But like, something's happening, and and something will happen just because of the predictions of climate change. We know something is going to happen in the next 50 years, but I have no fucking idea what. New world is being born. It's been being born for a fucking while though.
The morbid symptoms. The crisis consists precisely in the fact that the old world is dying and the new cannot be born. Into this vast interregnum, a great variety of morbid symptoms appear. And then Zizek misquoted that, intentionally misquoted it as the old world is dying and the new world struggles to be born. Now is the time of monsters.
That's right.
And that's like, I kind of prefer the first one, if I'm being honest. Because like, I mean, it is a time of monsters. We had far right prime ministers across Europe. Trump stands a very good chance of winning the last ever U.S. election. Not to go all lib on everybody, but like,
oh God, Trump being our Caesar is pathetic.
It would be really funny though. Like, it would be awful. It would be awful. It would be really bad. But there is a delicious humor in it.
Sure.
It's like it's what we deserve, perhaps.
But returning to the
he says as they drag him off, right?
We're returning to the quote though. You were saying you preferred the original.
Morbid symptoms. They're just symptoms. And someday the virus might go away, But the time of monsters. I don't feel like I can kill a monster, but I feel like I can take an Advil,
Morbid symptoms. Fuck it. That's the name of the episode.
Hell yeah.
All right. Well, I guess moving to wrapping up here, but I would say, do you want to plug anything as we're wrapping up here?
Yes, I do. So if anyone can stomach using Substack after we exposed it for being a horrific Nazi app. I do
Nazi infested app.
Yeah, Nazi app, Nazi infested app. I do have a Substack. It's called Post Cultural Amnesiac. You can find it at jessedgoodman.substack.com. I am currently running a series called A Year at the Movies, running from November, of 2023, hopefully through 2024, reviewing a movie and offering some philosophical insight. My name is Jesse D. Goodman. I am a graduate student at an undisclosed Catholic university in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I can be found on Twitter at PlatoFan402.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was so fun, and I do want to have you back on because
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like what we were able to talk that long without really a game plan of what to talk about. So it's
I had things I didn't even bring up. So
I know, right? I actually didn't even get into a ton of it, but I think I liked it more because it was a bit more of a meta commentary on media consumption in the last year and how it feels right now. But
and don't worry, folks. If you thought this year was bad, wait till you see what the writers have in store for 2024.
This season's gonna be great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and thank you so much, Jesse, for joining me.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Fruitless. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe to the show and leave a review on Apple Podcasts to help us out with the algorithm. If you really like the show, you can check out the show on Patreon. There is a link to that in the show notes. And speaking of Patreon, this show would not be possible without our lovely patrons, who include Gavin Aronson, Stephen aka Spike Stonehand, the worst of all possible worlds, Moss, Kyle Gannis, Thomas C., James R., Leo Zachary Dickinson, and of course, Chris Barker. I will see you later this month with another episode on the main feed, and hopefully a few more Patreon episodes.